I also think the reason Gundam
I mean,
killed Nakamura was because
Gundam
the
Tanaka
group was like they was doing
Something I want to say.
Do want to see the nature of the conflict cannot be.
Alright, this is my fault. I mentioned it offhandedly without really expanding on the points because the video was focused on Mikan. That's on me. Yeah, this will just be a shorter video where I expand a little bit upon the point I made in the recent analysis video where I said that Gundam's motive kind of sucked and was weird to see played so sympathetically after Mikan's setup for the remainder of the game. And this is entirely to make bank on my opinions because I need to feed my family and save for con season. So first up, the comments are absolutely right about Gundam's philosophy on not giving up on life, that giving up is an insult to life itself, etc. I don't agree with his philosophy, but that's fine. Gundam has his philosophy, I have mine. We're not obligated to agree with each other, we have different life experiences, and also he is a fictional character. His philosophy is fine. Until you take it into the context of this murder and try to play it sympathetically. I do want to talk about this comment specifically. I cropped everyone's names out because I don't want to send hate to the people who left these comments, and I sincerely request that you don't troll the comments sections trying to figure out who left them. This isn't a name and shame campaign, this is used as an example to make my argument. The comment kind of contradicts itself. Gundam had to use the fall to kill Nekomaru and hung him near a pillar, but didn't intend for him to hit the pillar, which would strongly increase the chances of death. If Nekomaru could survive a direct bazooka shot with barely a scratch, why would a 3-story drop kill him? A 1-story drop didn't kill me as a fleshy baby. Granted, I landed on a garden hose instead of a concrete pillar, but still, Nekomaru is a robot, so a 3-story fall probably wouldn't have killed him either. So the pillar must have been a necessary brutality. Except it wasn't. Gundam was the only one with access to the weapons arsenal at this stage, where there were a number of weapons that would not only be more efficient and less brutal, but also left behind less evidence. For example, I don't know, maybe this hammer he literally left at the crime scene? I get that a murder mystery needs to have red herrings to be interesting, but the red herring of the hammer implicates literally nobody and doesn't shift suspicion anywhere. It's just a roadblock to prolong the trial proceeding because they have to address the hammer because it's at the crime scene. Additionally, Gundam has access to literally all the weapons he could ever want, and decides that gravity is seriously the only way that Nekomaru can be killed, and that he can hang Nekomaru over a pillar, a man that weighs upwards of half a ton due to his robot body, and he won't be brutalized against it? And if you're going to argue that he would land on his head, no, his head seemed to be like one of the lighter parts of him. Falling down, he would probably land on his back. Gundam used this murder method not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Now, as I said about Gundam's philosophy on life, it's fine until you take it into this context and play it as sympathetic, and not the supremely fucked up absolute extreme of his mindset that it is. He knows there must be a chance the others won't figure it out. They've been starving for several days and had a single meal before the trial. Akane, who also has trauma related to starving, also just lost the only person she truly trusted. And Gundam didn't know about her trauma towards starving, but he definitely knew about the friendship she had with Nekomaru. Because of this, she's a lot louder during this trial, and everyone else is still kind of running on very little energy. They're not performing at 100% like the last 3 trials, and of course there's one less voice in the courtroom. This puts Gundam's mindset at a massive crossroads with no real right answer. He either eventually has to give up, breaking his philosophy on life in order to save the others, which then leads to the issue of if his goal all along was to save the others, he should have just confessed immediately. Or if the others eventually decide, I don't know, Kazuichi did it, Gundam has to accept that he just led everyone else to their death so he could escape, which goes against the idea he committed murder for a good reason. Nekomaru and Gundam might have consented to the death battle against each other, but regardless of who won, the class were going to have to do a trial. Gundam's motive and goal are established, but are completely at odds with one another. One has to be sacrificed to protect the other. Once Hajime pins him for the crime, he isn't particularly feisty about fighting back, which goes against his never give up on life philosophy, which he'd been employing for the entirety of the trial before he was placed under suspicion. It's so the game can pull a, he was a nice person all along underneath his chuny exterior. Something Danganronpa really isn't very good at writing. As much as I like the writing in Danganronpa, the evil bastard asshole is actually a good person has only ever worked when they applied it to Mukuro, and even then it's because good person is an honest-to-God stretch, where Mukuro's nature has a predisposition to good, but her nurture to cause despair and destruction overpowers it, and the game doesn't shy away from her atrocities, only redeeming her in a light novel with a hypothetical premise. It doesn't work with Gundam, whose philosophy goes against his reasons to kill. He gave up on life the moment he got into a death battle with Nekomaru. The only outcome that would end with Gundam coming out alive is he wins the fight against Nekomaru, and he wins the class trial. Granted, it's a bigger chance of survival than starving to death, but if he doesn't want to give up on life, then his best chance is to gamble that someone else was plotting a murder or a suicide. It is a desperate situation, very much like Sayaka's, but Sayaka was denied critical information about her situation that would have changed her decisions. Kaede also committed murder and stayed quiet, but it was primarily her guilt at missing the mastermind and her need to pass the baton to Shuichi causing her to stay silent. Kaede only fights because she needed Shuichi to accept the truth to save everyone else. Granted, I think Kaede also fucked it up because she could have taken the first blood perk, left and gotten help, but guilt can be a powerful force. Gundam has all the information, more than everyone else, since he solved the final dead room. Gundam doesn't feel guilt for what he did, and he doesn't have a baton to pass to anybody else. At the very least, someone should have spoken up and said something about how fucked up this mindset is when it's applied to the concept of murder. Gundam doesn't speak up not because his philosophy is to never give up on life, but because this is Danganronpa and there needs to be a complicated trial. In that, Trial 4 isn't very fascinating because it doesn't exist organically. Starvation is a great motive from the standpoint of Junko trying to rush everyone to their death, but it's actually Danganronpa's worst utilized motive. And a bad motive utilized well will always be better than a good motive utilized poorly. There's no way to make this work completely with no issues. A suicide would also indeed be giving up on life, and both Nekomaru and Gundam would refuse to do that. However, I think that the least plot-holey way to fix this would be to swap the murderer and the victim. Nekomaru had already been sidelined for most of Chapter 3, and he could have used more screen time. But additionally, Nekomaru probably would have only committed a fatal injury, been more of a shock as a culprit, and could employ one hell of a trolley problem mindset to justify the murder, saying that Gundam agreed to put his life on the line, and that the death of one to save the lives of several was a good option. This, however, would still result in the problem that this is Danganronpa and there needs to be a trial, so Nekomaru wouldn't be able to speak up. That said, I could work around this by having Nekomaru confess immediately, and Akane constantly lie, yell, deny, and say whatever she can to defend Nekomaru. It'd be more in character for her to do so since he's her closest friend and the only one she trusts, and it results in a very different trial, where rather than having to figure out what happened, because you don't know what happened, Hajime has to swim through the river of perjury flowing around the courtroom and figure out how Nekomaru did it so that Akane finally accepts it. So yeah, I don't find Gundam's motive all that compelling in the context of making him a consistent character, and he doesn't have much else aside from his theatrics. I don't hate Gundam, but I don't like him either. He's definitely one of the weaker characters of Danganronpa 2, and I think that if they just sucked it up a bit and acknowledged his mindset became pretty screwed up in this desperate situation a bit more, I might have come around. I might not have. Who knows? Thank you for watching.